Hello everybody, welcome to the final 24-25 season of the FPL Affairs podcast, the podcast that discusses our 9-month-long love affair with FPL, including the ins and outs that keep us awake at night. In this video, we look at the final table of the FPL Hardcores League. I'll go through a thorough analysis of my season, what may help you going towards next season, as well as what lessons myself and the admin team have learnt. Anyway, for the final time, let's get cracking.
And there's Mo Salah. There goes Haaland. He's on his way again. He's hungry. He's scored. Ice cold precision from Palmer. Kayo Saka. That is a diamond of a goal.
Greetings viewers to you from me, Matt, aka the FPL Affairs veteran, bringing you our last episode of the 24-25 FPL season. In this, I include our final FPL Hardcores league tables, the ins and outs of my own team this season, as well as what lessons myself and the admin team have learnt. Spoiler also included, as promised, are 2 FPL comedy songs. Really do bite the bullet and listen because the lyrics are absolutely hilarious for both of them. Anyway, we best get started. All right, the Game Week 38 quick review we'll go with, featured on the thumbnail, the man of the season, Mr. Mohamed Salah on the left. And in case you are wondering why Mr. Alexander-Arnold is slightly faded out on the right, that is double meaning. Number one, he's fading out of FPL because he's left Liverpool. And secondly, fading out of popularity with fans. And any Liverpool fans out there, please, I apologise if you get offended by it, but I did run this cover through with 3 Liverpool fans on the admin team, and all of them encouraged me to include it as the thumbnail. So blame them. How did I get on in game week 38? Well, up and down mixed week. Okay, I did get a green arrow, small green arrow, 1 point. The Arsenal, I was really confident that they'd get that clean sheet, that I went double up with Raya and Kivior. So Southampton with just that solitary strike was a bit of a bitter pill to swallow. Guardiola, unsurprisingly, 8 points. Just annoying that his expected ownership was 92%, so pretty much did nothing. Conser's 1 point, I blame Martinez. But I'm looking at the silver lining. I chose to play Raya instead of Martinez, who is on my bench. So I'm glad I got Raya's 2 rather than Martinez's -2. But the frustrating thing from an FPL point of view is it having the man down effectively meant Conser finished with 1 point because of Aston Villa conceding 2. My midfield, I was split with captaincy. The bulk of the week, I was on Bowen. And then Saturday morning, I decided to play safe when I made my transfers. Because my transfers were a little bit differential, possibly. I decided to play it safe with the captaincy and Captain Salah. So on one hand, I was very relieved when he did get his goal, moving him up to 10 points and doubled to 20. It was just frustrating that Bowen got 13 and captaining him would have got me an extra 6 points. And I would have finished 1 point above Mr. Kieran Ball. That would have been absolutely sweet to rub that in his face. Anyway, I'm going off the point. Burmo, his 8 points, which helped slightly. I was disappointed with Barnes, who was one of my 2 transfers in. I had 2 free transfers, which were Barnes and Evan Nielsen in for Sarr, Crystal Palace, and Marmoush, which incidentally left me with 5 million on the bank, which is probably the first time that's ever happened. Regardless, a dire letdown front 3 of Evan Nielsen 2, Isak 2, and Wissa 1. So frustrating, but it was the template-ish trio of Salah and Burmo Bowen in midfield, along with Guardiola in defence, that ensured I got a small green. So in the final game week, making a change after 2 years finishing with a red arrow, I finished 1 point above my safety score, giving me a grand total of 2,521 points. Only 2 on the bench, thanks to Martinez removing 2 of them. So bench choices at least went the right way. Old rank had been 86k. That moved me up to 82.7k, which was my highest rank of the season. So definitely finished on a high with a change of 4.04%. And the game week rank was 1.9 million. So that's how I finished the season. We're now going to move on to the league tables with our entire season review. There were hardcore FPL League and Cup, the top 20. The Reds and Johnny Sav finished in 20th, 2,494, point behind former admin Ben Sears, Cartolino Rosso. Above him, Matthew Johns in 18th, Trent Arnold. I wonder if that's the proper one, the real one or not. I'm not sure. In 17th, 9 points ahead of them in 16th was myself. Level on points, but behind on transfers, because I made more transfers than Cameron Shearman and Westerhay. Just above us, Silos, I hope that's pronounced correctly, in 14th. Mr. Kieran Ball, admin Crystal Balls, finishing in 13th. Chase Jaycox, who I think I knocked out of the cup, finishing unlucky 13. Quite close, actually, between us 4, 5, 9, 10 points, 11 points. Chase just behind Omar Saidi in 11th. And he finished 8 points behind now the top 10. Mark Noble in 10th. Joel Joy in 9th. Paul Evans, Cinnaboy in 8th. Top admin, Better Call Salah, Mick Shannon in 7th. Then a jump above him in 6th place, the admin collective Admins Assemble with 2,574. So close to Adam Holmes, just a solitary point. Well done, Adam in 5th. Harris Razak in 4th, 2 points above Adam. Then our top 3, which remained unchanged from the final game week, despite second place Neil getting a whopping 84. Mike Hart finishing bang on 2,600 points in 3rd. Neil Hamill, big jump, 27 points ahead of him in 2nd. And the winner this year is Yoshi Kasama. So well done to you, Yoshi, finishing with a whopping 2,643 points. And congratulations as well, Yoshi, on your overall ranking of 1,950th in the world. So inside the top 2K. Well done, you. Fab job. I'll be interested to hear from you in our Facebook group, FPL Affairs. If you can message me, FPL Affairs Matt, that would be fantastic. I'd love to hear how that compares to your ranks over previous seasons. Anyway, that was our top 20 in the league. The FPL Hardcores Cup went to our admin, Mr. Paul Allnut, with his no Salah, no Haaland team, finishing 13 points in the final above the admin collective team. Admins Assemble. That was a bitter pill to swallow for the rest of us. And FPL Weasel for being so smug. Shocking. Alrighty. That's how our FPL Hardcores League and Cup finished in the 24-25 season. We're going to go right the way back to the beginning and we'll look through mine and see whether you can pick up any similarities with your team, whether there's any lessons you can learn from mine that would help with you going forward. Maybe you can relate to some of those decisions. But first, as promised, in appreciation to Mr. Dylan Robinson, his opening season track, which he tried to get us to have for the theme song, but it's too long, 3 minutes. Please listen. Please listen to the lyrics. Class, if you ask us lot. Anyway, over to it.
Now it's Saturday morning, the squads are all set. I've picked the best players, the best I could get. From Salah to Holland, they're all in my team. This fantasy football, it's more than a dream. I'm a fantasy Premier League master, oh can't you see? With my captain's hat on, I'm leading victory. Points are stacking, rank is climbing week by week. In this fantasy world, I'm on a winning streak. Transfers and wild cards, my strategy's tight. Swapping those players to get the points right. Benched a hat-trick hero, oh what a shame. But next week I'll be back, I'm still in the game. I'm a fantasy Premier League master, oh can't you see? With my captain's hat on, I'm leading victory. Points are stacking, rank is climbing week by week. In this fantasy world, I'm on a winning streak. Bench boosts and triple captains, I've got it all planned. Even when my players flop, I take it in hand. Laughing at my rivals, they just don't understand how I'll win this whole league with my ultimate band. Green arrows rising, my ranks on the climb. I'm living the dream, one game at a time. From the depths of the league, I've risen so high. In this fantasy premier, I'm touching the sky. I'm a fantasy Premier League master, oh can't you see? With my captain's hat on, I'm leading victory. Points are stacking, rank is climbing week by week, week by week. In this fantasy world, I'm on a winning streak. So here's to the managers, the tactics and fun. May your FPL journey be second to none. With laughter and joy, let's play this grand game. For in Fantasy Premier League, we all seek fame.
Well, thank you for that, Dylan, and apologies for my absolutely lame and pathetic dad dancing. So let's quickly move on for that and go back and see what my previous rank history is and my opening squad. So I've included my past 12 seasons. You notice from the table on the left, I did not play in 1920. Not quite sure why. The 2016-17 season, I did not play because Newcastle were in the Championship. Before that, I had a mixture. I think I started okay in previous years, but was very much a casual manager. And then the numbers in the game increased. So going from 12-13 season, finishing 431k, to the following season, 784k, then over 1 million, then over 2 million. The season off, 4.3 million, 4.1 million, took a break. Then I decided in 2020, I'll come back, I'll take it a bit more seriously, make sure I do my changes and monitor my squad and so forth every week and not miss a deadline. And I started that off by just staying actually quite safe and template, where when making transfers, I just looked at who was on the best form, which players, and which ones were the most popular transfers in and most popular transfers out. And that was generally what I did for a couple of years, and it got me 746k and 700k. I then looked at my points, which we'll look at later on, and I was getting closer to 2000. So I thought, you know what, I'll set a new target of 2000 points, and that I was determined to get that 2000 points. Actually, I exceeded that, which shot me up from 700k in 21-22 season to 61k in the 22-23 season. That was a painful gamble final week because I was just outside the top 50k, and I gambled the last week. I can't remember what it was now, but I really wanted to break into that top 50k. Unfortunately, it went wrong and I dropped to 61, which was tough, but thought either way, that's good. Target for the following season would be top 50k, which I managed. Final week on that was another gamble, another red arrow, because I was close to the top 20k. So I gambled, and then I ended up dropping out of the top 25. So that was tough. But anyway, moving on to this season, when building my first squad, I thought, right, how could I start off slightly differently? I thought I'll try and be a bit braver with my opening selection to try to get a good start, so I'm not playing catch up. And with that, and I'll bring that team up, I took a few calculated risks, I would say. Looking at the team, it's not actually that terrible. Started Henderson in goal because of how Crystal Palace had finished the previous season. Unfortunately, they didn't start it very well. I thought I'll try and be clever and go for the Crystal Palace #2 goalkeeper as the cheap option. Saliba, Arsenal defence, Gvardiol, Man City defence. On my way into the Liverpool one, I thought, and I consulted that Liverpool admin members about from pre-season who was going to be their starting back four. So I thought I'm not paying the 7.5 million for Trent, and they advised Kwanzaa, so I put him in my defence. Robinson on the bench for Fulham. He ended up doing okay for me over several weeks, and then Johnson of Ipswich, who unfortunately didn't seem to be getting very many minutes. My midfield, Saka, Smith Rowe, thought it would be a safe option from doing all right at Arsenal and moving to Fulham for minutes. Gordon, based on his performance and that he didn't get a huge amount of time at the Euros, so I thought he'd start off okay. I changed from a Salah-only draft to a Haaland-only draft because I felt that Man City's opening fixtures were better. Haaland's pre-season, I think, was marginally better, and didn't know how Salah and Liverpool were going to get started under Slot. So I thought for Liverpool attack, I'll sneak in with Jota. Chris Wood, I went for up front. That was okay. Isak, Newcastle head on, captained him for the opening week. And yeah, as mentioned, Haaland. The main things I think I really regret from that opening squad is Kwanzaa ended up coming off at half time. Liverpool went on to keep a clean sheet, and Kwanzaa didn't start again for Liverpool for some time. So that was an issue I had to address over the coming weeks. And I'd also gone with, because I'd chosen Saka, I went against the Palmer option for funds and thought I'd go with Nkunku. And little did I know that his minutes were going to go to pot as well. So what I learned from game week 1 and that opening squad was I had a Kwanzaa problem to solve and an Nkunku problem to solve. Chip strategy, we'll move on to in a moment as to what it was. I was actually quite fixed with my chip strategy once we got closer to the chip season. Wildcard I had been intending and ideally hoping to hold until somewhere between game week 8 and game week 12 because of fixture swings. But then with how Salah hit off in the opening few game weeks, and I won't be ashamed to admit it, I panicked into a wild card in game week 4 because of lack of investment in the Liverpool squad. So we'll show up there, game week 4, my wild card squad changed to Raya and Fabianski as my goalkeeping double up. My back 5, I went with Collins of Brentford and Fass of Leicester. They were on the bench, starting with Robertson, Pau Torres of Villa, and Rico Lewis for Man City. Midfield changed that in the entirety. Salah, Rodgers, Eze, Diaz, and Semenyo coming in. And up front, one change up front, João Pedro coming in for Chris Wood. So painful. What was painful about this really was Crystal Palace were not performing. They had some good fixtures, but they just weren't getting the returns. Salah had a couple of blank game weeks, which was frustrating. And I think Lewis got injured this game week or the game week after, which was frustrating as well. As you can see, my investment in the defence for funds wise, I had to go for Robertson rather than either Trent or Van Dijk. And then typically that week, I think Isak possibly came off the bench. Not off the bench. I think Isak got substituted because of injury. And João Pedro, we didn't hear about injury either, and he wasn't in the squad. So not a great 3-5-2 in game week 4, and I got a red arrow with that wild card. And as it goes, game week 4 did not work out very well, and my rank plummeted over the coming weeks, which we'll look at later. Jumping 20 weeks, again, chip strategy for this week, game week 24. I regret that one. The whole week I've been planning triple captain Salah with a double game week. And then the assistant manager came out, and I think I followed some crowds. My Liverpool triple up was Salah, Diaz, and Alisson. But I didn't go with the triple captain that I'd been intending on doing, and I strongly regret doing that. Transferring out Alisson to enable me to bring in Slot. Simpler option would have just been to bring in David Moyes and to do the Moyes Emery switch would have got me more points. But I did get green arrows for the 3 weeks I had Slot, and I kept Slot for the 3 weeks. Although the alternative options, in a bit more risque, which was how I intended on playing the assistant manager chip, would have worked out better for me. But it is what it is. So if the assistant manager chip comes back next season, I will definitely play it differently, and I will definitely utilize and go for a bit more table bonus, which when we heard what the assistant manager chip was, that was my intention. I wanted to brave it and go for it and go for table bonus. Look at those mid-table managers who were perhaps having home fixtures to clubs slightly 5 places higher up, and look for the upside there. But in the end, I didn't go for it. Caved and went safe with Slot and got punished to a degree. So that was the second chip. Then at that point, I was decided I was going to transfer my way through game week 29 with the view of wildcarding in game week 31, bench boost 33, free hit 34, and to use the triple captain at some other point, depending on what arose. And then the Newcastle double game week, both games at home in game week 32 was announced, and my Newcastle cap of, right, I'm triple captaining Isak in game week 32, which we'll look at the squad for that week in a moment. I ended up moving my second wild card, a week earlier to game week 30 because of the forthcoming double game weeks. Tripled up with Arsenal, Raya, Gabriel, and Saka. Tripled up with Man City, Gvardiol, Savinho as my differential, and Marmoush. Tripled up with Crystal Palace, Munoz, Sarr. I went with over Eze and Mateta. And Newcastle, I went with Trippier over Livramento and Burn. Lots of the crowds were going for them, and I thought, well, for a few weeks I'm going to go against it with Trippier because I had the funds, and he was on set pieces. And Livramento had only had 1 attacking return, despite him getting in some good areas. He'd only got 1 attacking return, so I'm being keen with Newcastle's fixtures as well. So that week, wild card, game week 30, like with my first wild card, small red, which was frustrating, while having double Villa clean sheet on the bench, and for Murphy assist, that was bitter pill to swallow, meaning 19 points on the bench. Game week 31 turned around, had a good game week 31. Game week 32, where I triple captained. Triple captain wasn't sensational. 11 points for 2 home fixtures for Isak. I was disappointed with 33 points. I think that game week, although I got a decent green arrow from it, it was largely because of, I think, Trippier's 12 points, clean sheet for Martinez, 9-pointer from Bradley, differential from him, 7 from Sarr, 7 from Marmoush. Frustratingly, again, Conte on the bench with a clean sheet. So I wish I would have had played him instead of Munoz when they conceded 9 goals to Man City and Newcastle. I think what I definitely took from that game week was don't go all in on double game weeks, particularly if a team's got tricky fixtures, which Palace did have, in away to City and away to Newcastle. So that's something I'll definitely learn from that week. But I was lucky enough that the rest of the squad did well enough that I got a decent green arrow from it. The following week, bench boost was very much a meh week. Thankfully, I made the right goalkeeper choice, choosing Raya and having Martinez on the bench. It was game week 33. Why I had included Martinez on my wildcard in game week 30 for the bench boost purposes. And in a way, worked out. Bradley did with 1 small assist, I think. Conte not a clean sheet. And it was frustrating, really, that Savinho was very much up and down with minutes, and it was difficult to tell because of the cup competitions and the rotation of Pep Guardiola as they were closing in on the semi-final of the FA Cup and trying to second guess which weeks he was going to play. But yeah, this was the side I went quite heavy with those doubling in the Aston Villa players, Arsenal players, Palace players, Man City players, which had gone from the wild card. And I did get a small green this game week. What was frustrating was the following week, the blank game week, which I free hit on, was my benching choices for that week. I got 75 points, which was a win above the average and above those people that did not free hit. But because of my captaincy choice and benching choice, I got a red arrow despite getting 75 points. All 5 of my defenders in the squad all returned. 8 Norries, 11, Kukurea 6, Shah with 6, but unfortunately it was the other Newcastle defenders, which was frustrating. I thought I'd go for a Shah punt, and the same with Barnes, going for him ahead of Murphy. Clive again, but Diaz returned, Salah returned, Isak got a small return, Cunha returned. Basically, what cost me that week was, in a way, benching Sessegnon, but to be fair, I wasn't going to play him above the others because of the fixtures. But I think I had that combo pairing when I was doing the transfers, and I think I almost actually played Kepa in goal and Sessegnon in defence as my Fulham coverage, but I didn't want to do Fulham double up, and it was disappointing. The Raul Jimenez option, and he had really high XG that game week as well, but a yellow card and a single pointer. Frustrating. Game week 34. But then looking overall at the points that my chips got me, my bench boost, that particular week I played it, I got 83 points, and the average was 67 points. But as I said myself, for me, that bench boost week was meh for the bench, but the rest of the team did quite well, which is why I got 83 above 67, and I probably think a lot of the other bench boost weeks would have been weeks which were lower scoring. Triple captain 33, justified in why it was a poor one because the average was 37, mostly because I think a lot caught Salah on a double game week or Haaland getting a hat-trick on a single game week. Free hit was 75, marginally 10 points above the global average, 65, but again, that was probably because the game week itself was a decent scoring free hit week. And when we move on to looking at my green and red arrow proportions for each week, it didn't work out. And underneath that, it's got a little bar chart. I can tell the difference between light blue / teal and green. Bench boost and bench boost average, and how I was above for 2 of the 3 chips. I think lesson learned there moving forward. Not be afraid to use triple captain in a good single game week free hit. Was that a bit unlucky? Was it? Maybe not. But that'll be something to think about over the summer in advance of next season. Other particular notable stats, my most captain player was Mo Salah, who I picked 18 times, and the highest score from him as captain was 58 points in game week 24. Again, the week I decided to start the assistant manager chip on slot when the whole week build up to that I'd been triple captain Salah, and then it was just before the deadline I changed to assistant manager. As I said earlier, that hurt, but at least generally from my captain picks, I was relatively successful. 30 out of the 38 game weeks, my captain returned, meaning I got 717 points from my captain picks versus the global average of 502. So I'm pleased with playing quite safe-ish on the captaincy. I had 328 points on the bench versus the global average of 198. It's difficult how to interpret that and what to learn from that. I think my main take will be, if your points are significantly higher than the global average, take that you probably got more invested in a squad and a bench that had minutes, and you didn't have budget players that were super cheap that didn't necessarily get the minutes. But then you can also take into account some of those maybe dead teams where benches were full of injured or suspended players. 328 on the bench is what it is. But actually, looking at this, the stats for my wildcards, the game weeks I actually played them weren't good. 49 points wildcard 1 versus the average of 58 points. And wildcard 2, I got 54 points in game week 30 versus the average of 60. On first wildcard, it plummeted. Second wildcard, it picks up quite considerably, which we'll look at in a moment. And flitter in, again, the captain pick highlights. I mentioned the 717 points, 30 out of 38 successful, which is 79%. 32%, it was the best in team picks, and Mo Salah being my best in game week 24. My worst captaincy was in game week 6 of Erling Haaland, 4 points. So if you're finding this fruitful so far, don't forget to like and subscribe. Now, comparing my week by week points with the average. Again, the average is the sort of green squiggly mountain range, and my own points being the light blue one. Good first couple of game weeks. Average game week 5, so a poor game week 4, but then game week 5 looked to pick up before mine plummeted game week 6 to game week 10. In game week 10, if you look carefully, my rank was at its all-time lowest. But then it managed to pick up because the 11 weeks after that, I was comfortably above the game week average point score. Brief drop on game week 22, significantly higher above the game week averages, whilst I had my assistant manager chip, which also included my top score of the season of 130. Then after that, dropped for 3 weeks, which in some ways I wasn't too surprised. I got 3 red arrows in the game weeks following the assistant manager chip and into the blank 29, because the transfers I were making were not necessarily optimum to the fixtures those weeks. It was trying to identify the players best suited for game week 29. And then wildcarded in game week 30. As you can see from that point onwards, I was well above the game week average right through to the end of the season. So that was pleasing. And after doing that, we're going to look at an alternative line graph of my game week rank across the season. So my highest overall rank, ignore the text at the top. The screenshot was taken before the 24-25 stats were completely through. But my highest overall rank of the season was what I finished with, which was 82k, which was lucky. My worst was 4.5 million in game week 10. So it was a hard graph from that point, because I think had I not been doing this podcast, I was very close to conceding defeat in that. But Jack, the FPL master, persuaded me not to. And if you follow the line graph right down from the bottom, game week 11 was a really good week, shot up in rank, some really good jumps over the coming few weeks. Then once I broke into the top million, I didn't drop out of it. I teetered around the 500k mark for a few weeks, from around game week 18 up to when I played the assistant manager in game week 24, which you can see with the second dashed vertical line. Then it picked up a little bit, where I got just inside the top 300k. After that, dropped back down to just inside the top 500, and sort of around about the 490k mark when I made my second wild card, and it was uphill gradually from that, creeping into the top 200k, then into the top 100k, and staying there once I got there. So that was generally tracking the rank across the whole season. We've discussed the points and the chips. We'll now look at how the impact of those was with the green and red arrows that I got. I've split the season up into quarters. Apologies if this is confusing. It's starting game week 1 at the bottom of the first column, sort of working it upwards. I couldn't figure out on my phone how to switch it so game week 1 started at the top. But anyway, 1.7 million after the first game week. Second game week was good, so I shot up to 758k. So a green arrow, then 2 reds. 2 really bad reds of game weeks, which were 4.6 million game week rank and 5.8 million rank. So I plummeted back down to 1.7 million. Okay, game week 5, terrible game week 6. And actually, if you look at the game week arrows from game week 6 through to game week 10, 4 of those game weeks I was ranked. My game week rank was 7.7 million, 7.6 million, 7.4 million, 8 million. And despite a small green in game week 7, that really, those 4 game weeks in those 5 game weeks, really ranking plummeting from 1.5 million to 4.5. And I think reflecting on that period, a lot was down to not holding Salah at the right time, because I brought him in for a couple of weeks on my first wild card. He wasn't doing great, and then the transfers I made, I ended up sacrificing Salah to get in, I think, Palmer and a couple of others for good fixtures. And yeah, it didn't work. They blanked, and Salah continued to haul and rank to the extent where I needed to look at how to get Salah back in, which I managed to do so game week 11 or game week 12. My second set of the season included my biggest green streak, where I got eight consecutive greens from game week 11 upwards. Interestingly, that none of them involved a chip, but yeah, some big jumps with some of them, where if you look at game weeks 11, it was game week rank of 900k, game week 13, game week rank of 640k, game week 16, game week rank of 380k, game week 18, a game week rank of 358k. So those, as well as the other ones being around the 1 point something game week ranks, I shot up from the game week 10, 4.5 million, right up to 528k after game week 18. Dropped slightly with game week 19, and then a mixed third quarter to the season where I got 5 green arrows and 5 reds. As explained, the game week 20 and 21 continued the decent form, the decent run I'd had in the second quarter. 2 reds, then I had the 3 greens with the assistant manager, which you can see as showing up in that period of 3 game weeks 24 to 26. Then the 3 red arrows, where I had game weeks of just over 5 million for 2 of them, and then just under 5 million for 1, which was the building up and just trying to navigate through blank game week 29. And then the final quarter was much like the second quarter, where I got 8 greens in the last 9 game weeks, and the only red in that, ironically, being my free hit game week 34 with a couple of bad benching decisions. And what confuses me was, even that week I had a game week rank of 1 million, yet I got a red arrow, only a small one, where I dropped 2,000 places, but then recovered thereafter. That was 147k ranking, crept upwards slightly, and then the game week 37 really was massive for me, because it's a 95k in the world game week rank, massive green arrow, and I shot up from 128k to 80 to 86. So yeah, that ensured really that I finished the season inside the top 100k, which, if that would have been offered at game week 10, I would have taken it. Start of the season, my target was top 50k at a minimum, but largely my targets for each of the last few years has been to better my previous season, so that being more points and better rank. This season I've got 1 point less, but a rank of 27, so 55,000 spots lower than I finished last season. and we'll compare my 5-game week rank because I got, and I'll put this in the comments in the description, to a website where you can find out for free your all-time overall rank, and it also shows up your rank over the past 3 seasons, your rank over the past 5 seasons, 7 seasons, 10 seasons. I'm only going to show you the last 5 because including this season, I played the last 5 consecutive, and I had that, if you remember from earlier in the episode, I had that season off, the 1920 season. So this season, yep, finished with 2,521, 5.4 million in the bank. And my 3-year rank is 6,052nd in the world if I get a top 100k again next season, which is what I think my target will be, is to again break the 2,500 point barrier and the top 100k. If I can get the top 50k, that'll certainly be a big aim, but it will depend on my start to the season. And the FPL summary, they described me as a playmaker, a visionary in the transfer market, even if not all moves reaped immediate rewards, and the playmaker builds their team around a stable captain, utilising all chips at their disposal. So yeah, half the season I had Seller captain, and I used all of my chips and stuck largely from game week 24 onwards after the triple captain era, generally stuck with my chip strategy. From then onwards, the only marginal change was bringing my wildcard to chip a week earlier from 31 to 30. So what lessons have I learned personally this season? I think, for starters, analysing the data that's been accessible and what I can find out both from using live FPL and others about myself and my own season, those that have shown up. What I've shown with the red arrows and green arrows transfers, I made 39 transfers across the season, which is 5 hits of -4, which is the lowest I've had. It was cautious but careful in a way, and determined to reduce the hits. And if you were watching the podcast earlier in the season, you know that my co-host Jack, his favourite saying to finish each episode was roll when you can, when it comes down to your transfers. So that, plus what I've shared with you, is if you have signed up in your settings with your FPL account, try to get your personalized end of season review, which I've shown and shared here, and it should be emailed directly to you from the official Premier League, and try to use that and identify where or how you may have made some mistakes, whether you can spot when you used your whether you can spot when you used your chips, and whether that correlates with any green or red arrows, whether it's significantly above the game week average for those weeks. And also, I think, yes, I got red arrows game weeks 27 through 29, but I think now the season's finished, what I've sort of made a bit of peace with is how the transfers in that period were made to navigate a blank double game week. And if I was chasing the upside, there were other transfers I would have preferred to make. They would have been detrimental going into game week 29. So yeah, definitely use whatever information you can find out to try to identify any trends and how you can use that going into the 25-26 season. If you're very much a mini league person rather than an overall ranked person, can you learn anything from your mini league rivals? If you watched our penultimate episode of the season, the admin awards, where I had some serious and some not so serious awards, I did a lot of data scribbling, which I could have done using a website rather than old school pen and paper, where I looked at who had good first halves of the season, who had better halves in the second half, which to me, since chip season really is game weeks 24 onwards, I think those that had a strong second half to the season arguably had more successful chip strategies. Transfers made, the top 2 in the league, in our admin league, Mick, who won the league, made 11 transfers, so double mine. And Kieran, Mr. Crystal Balls, made 3 times the number of took 3 times the number of hits than I did. So from that, really, I take it that those two were a bit more risk averse with their transfers and chased the upside on occasions. They have admitted, to be fair, about which of those, if any, they regret making. But I'm going off the point. Bench points. I think what I learned from them is those on the bench would be the ones with the most points. Arguably, had the strongest squad. And what he'd argue with that was FPL Weasel Paul, his no Haaland, no Salah team. So he didn't own either throughout the whole season. Therefore, he's going to have he had the budget to afford a stronger overall squad and have therefore a strongest bench. And he actually got the most points on the bench. And in the second half of the season, lo and behold, when Salah and Holland had poor seasons, he had the fourth most points in our league. But if you'd like to find out more of the statistics and discussion and awards that I found out from that, follow the link at the end of this video and to all our content on the channel. And you should be able to find the admin's award to see that. But if you're a mini league person and concentrate more on that than your overall rank, try to figure out what moves your nearest challengers are likely to make, and if you feel that is the best option, or if you try to pick an alternative to go through it. But it depends on what your target is and how far you're adrift. But really, myself, I think a lot of it, I just concentrated on playing my own game and picking the best selections. And I ended up, after my second wildcard, I was a lot more template than the rest. But I think what was different this season was the vast majority of the premiums actually, for one reason or another, whether that be injuries or form, or I think certainly the England representatives off the back of the Euros came into the season quite poorly. So I'd be intrigued as to whether tiredness and that aspect and knock-on effect of fitness had an implication. But anyway, I'm going off the point. Couple more things I've learned is one about from looking at this data and what else I've found is the importance of watching football rather than just going solely from data, because you'll get players that are big on data, like for example Jackson, and who had loads of big chances but was outscored by Isak and Wood comfortably, and those two had less big chances but they're significantly more clinical. So expected goals and predicted points, I think you can take a little bit with a pinch of salt, and I would look more at which players are more on form and are performing well and have got good fixtures coming up, that rather than the actual stats side. And then lastly, it's the lesson I've learned from Mr. Jack Lucas is run when you can. Remember, at the start of this season, ruling was changed that we can roll up to 5 transfers. I only got to 2, I think, because on 3 occasions I made 3 transfers, which were all -4 hits. So I may try to be more disciplined and strict next season and look more in blocks of 6, identify when there's fixture swings, and just look at those in brackets of which players will be good for that particular window of fixtures. Roll the transfers over those 5 weeks. So after that first fixture swing, so that maybe after game week 5 or 6, if I've rolled up to 4, possibly even 5 transfers, that's effectively a mini wild card where you can bring in 5 players that have got good fixtures and take out the 5 players in your squad that have got the worst fixtures and aren't players like Salah that are fixture proof. I'm definitely going to try and roll in blocks more going into next season. Now, as for the admin team, I have asked them what lessons they've learned from this season, and 5 of them I'm going to share. Some good and serious, some not quite so much, but we'll move on to those. We'll start off with the league champion of Mr. Mick Shannon. He said he's going to next season trust his gut more. He got rid of Eze right near the end of the season, right before his biggest hauls, to get KDB in instead, simply because everyone else was. So that's what he's going to take into next season. And to be fair, I think I would as well. There were some times where I had a gut towards one, feeling to some degree captaincy, but others with transfers. But because I had that level of doubt, I didn't, and played safe, or made changes and went against form. But anyway, trust in his gut more. That was Mick's lesson. Barry Stokes, the differential king from the All In Football podcast. His is to stay loyal to players who've returned in previous seasons, even though they're out of form. So I think examples of this season would be ones such as, well, Salah the back end of the season, Haaland the back end of the season, Saka the back end of the season, Palmer the back end of the season to a degree. So he's looking at those sorts of players that have done well before and sticking to them. And I think you can tie that in with the role in the transfers, really, is if you've got players that have got maybe off form but have good fixtures, if they've proved their abilities in the past, to stick with them and keep the transfer in case something happens and you drastically need it, whether that's an injury or a suspension. So that was Barry's. Kieran Ball, the admin runner-up and the winner of the admin head-to-head league, I've tried to summarise his lengthy lesson learned. He said there's not necessarily a huge amount that he regrets from the season. One main one is captaining Evan Nielsen in the final week rather than Bowen. He wanted to captain Bowen, but he only did because he wanted to go slightly differential to close down Mick at the top, and it backfired. But he very much did say how this season has been quite noticeably luck-based for chunks of it. In particular, those last 6 weeks, he felt he went for obvious differentials with good statistics and good form, but they either didn't do anything or the 50-50 decisions went the opposite way. I may, and I'm not going to apologise to you to you, Kieran, for this, is I may have omitted off the end of what lessons he's learned is his criticism of coming onto this podcast, because apparently following coming on this podcast in game week 32, he was full of full of red arrows. So apparently, as I mentioned before, I cursed him with a wand or spell book from somehow. And I'm not actually best pleased that he started talking about that and complaining about that and moaning about that on the All In Football podcast, which he guest appeared on. Kieran, we need strong words before next season, for definite. And I may consider lifting that curse if it's real or if it's not real. That's up to you. Moving on, the final two are both from the FPL Affairs former co-hosts. Firstly, the FPL Affairs apprentice, Mr. Martin Murray. For him, what he's learned is that going differential this season, as opposed to template, took him from 2 millionth in his first season to 600k in his second. So moving forward, he's thinking to maybe if he takes less and he uses his chips more strategically, so actually has a chip strategy rather than playing them randomly. He's going for the ambitious of the actual top 100k, whether he can jump up 500,000 places for next season. That, Martin, full credit, hats off to you for your ambition for the 25-26 season, but also hats off for how you've done this season. And it's interesting how Mark's taken, and for him, going differential worked. If you actually looked at his rankings, he had a really great run of 11 green arrows at one stage, which was around the time when Cunha was really hauling and nobody really had him, before Cunha's first suspension, which shot him up right down from about 3.5 million to something ridiculous. He was teetering on the top 100k, I think. But then he'd very much go from, because he was so differential, going from a week where he got a massive green arrow to the next week where none of his differentials did great and he got a massive red arrow. So he's very much up and down all season. But either way, going from 2 million which is actually quite a decent rank mark for your first ever season last year, to 600k in your second is, yeah, fair play to you for that. Well done for that. boost. So we shall have to wait and see as to how you play the game next year. And the final one goes to my philosopher co-host, ex-co-host, Mr. Jack Lucas, who sadly had to give up his co-host duties in game week 33 when his first child was born. But the lesson that Jack has given is actually don't have a baby near the end. 5 red arrows in the last 6 game weeks since his son was born. So, viewers, if you are planning having children, try to get the 9-month timing right so they arrive in the off season, significantly off in the off season, or in some ways earlier on in the season. So your August, September births, perhaps, rather than April time. And then you might not have the same problem as Jack, who dropped from 49k to 222 in those last 6 game weeks, which was his worst season for quite some time. And Jack, I apologize for sharing that if you did not want me to. Tough luck. You should have stayed. And maybe my gibberish would have overcome your waffle and you would have taken on board some of my pointers and my green arrows. So if my analysis and lessons learned for the season has been helpful, please click the thumbs up, like the video, like the post on Facebook, subscribe to our channel, look back at some of our chip idiots guide videos onto the different chips which will edit and re-release over the holidays and in the off season before next season starts. If you subscribe to our channel, also please hit the bell and then you'll get any notification of the videos that appear through, but well, between now and the game starts, or even actually more so the first game week, which I believe is Friday the 15th of August. Getting in touch, X, our username FPL Affairs, Facebook group, just search in the groups in the Facebook groups FPL Affairs. Alternatively, the Facebook group HTTP address with Fantasy Premier League FPL 1 as a handle at the end. YouTube channel at FPL Affairs, and the Spotify long link, which we'll try to sort out because there have been problems with that this season for fixing it. And lastly, I'm delighted to say we have got an official FPL Affairs Club World Cup mini league, which code is on screen. Capitals XRM4ZVQD. The link to also join the group I'll put in the description to this. And if you are in our Facebook group, I am sure you could not have missed the 1,000,001 times that Starboy has posted and shared the mini league code. But anyway, I'm going to leave this code on screen and how to get in touch on screen because I'm going to play our AI end of season FPL Affairs song tube, which was created by our champion, Mr. Mick Shannon. Listen carefully to those lyrics, and I will try not to, pardon my language, wet myself laughing. All that's left to say is keep your FPL Affairs Club World Cup under wraps, or the tournament, which starts on the 15th of June. Other than that, feel free to share and brainstorm with us and with the Facebook group your teams once the 25-26 season game actually gets released. In some ways, I'm excited already. Anyway, I'm gibberishing. Gibberishing? Is that even a word? Anyway, enjoy your summer, enjoy the tournament, and we'll be in touch for next season. Bye-bye.
Chasing dreams on the weekend split. Lineups locked in the pentiment. Captain picks in the dead of night. Fantasy glory is our life. Newcastle lifted, that trophy in hand. Arsenal shells still gather dust. Man City crumbled, their shines just rust. Transfers in for the double game week. Wild cards flying, strategies unique. Bench boost hits and triples the charm. Fantasies fire keeps hearts warm. Tick tock the clock, it tells the tale. Fantasy pros sail it without fail. Midfield my Astros, defenders grind. Chasing points on treasure to find. Liverpool crowned, kings of the land. Newcastle lifted, that trophy in hand. Arsenal shall still gather dust. Man City crumbled, their shines just rust. Trends flying high like rockets through air. Fantasy stakes raised beyond compare. Late goals and make our rivals weep. Game week, magic fueling no sleep. Chips flying high like rockets through air. Fantasy stakes raised beyond compare. Late goals and make our rivals weep. Game week, magic fueling no sleep.